Undisputed Boxing. It's Sunday afternoon, Sunday night. We're back to talk about news. It is a bit of a slow news week. We're going to try and muster up some news and talk about a couple of topics that have been happening. I'm here with Rick. So much talk about, this week about, is the fight on? Isn't it on? I think Tyson Fury is playing mind games already. Rick, there's been a few interviews as well with IFL and Boxing Scene. What do you make of it all? What's going on? Is it happening, or is it not?
I think it is. I mean, it's you listen to Fury and he says it's kind of ages away and there's problems, and then you listen to the two promoters. So I know I probably said like 10 days ago they'll announce it like this week or something. So
Yeah,
I'm both saying they're like days away. And when you get Warren, Bob Arum, and all agreeing, it makes you going to look a bit stupid now, wouldn't they? And I don't think they'd do that. And I don't know if Fury is just frustrated of the timeline, or he just doesn't believe it until it's done, or he's just playing the mind games, or there's something in there that he's resisting, and maybe he's the issue. Where everyone's happy with everything, and they're all saying, "Oh, you listen, Tyson, you just got to go with it." Maybe it's something like it's AJ's name at the front, and he doesn't like that. I don't know, and he won't come out and say he's the reason for the delay. Or maybe it's a court case issue with Wilder still. It's hard to know, but we've gone from a couple of weeks away to days away. So I'm hoping next week by next Sunday, I'm hoping we can say it's done. And they might just be waiting for a time to announce it. Do you know what I mean? They might be just waiting for an optimal time where Hearn's back in the UK and, they don't want to do it. They didn't want to do it before a Canelo fight or something. I don't know. And maybe this week will be a good week because we've got a Coley fighting, and he may even go to that, Joshua, because he's the man, who manages him.
Yeah.
So waiting for this week where they're all in the UK and Joshua can be on TV on Sky next week. Hard to know, but I haven't lost any faith in it happening.
Yeah.
Are you confident?
I think I am. Yeah. I mean, the detractors, the people that would say that it's not happening, are only going to be led by those interviews that Tyson Fury's done this week, where he's kind of almost dampened the potential of it happening, and saying, look, I'll fight anybody, or maybe I'll fight Wilder. And it's almost, there's actually been a little bit of backlash on social media, like on YouTube and Twitter, just for him even saying that maybe I won't fight AJ. The backlash has actually been quite, it's quite interesting how people can quickly turn. Because I think if it wasn't to happen, I think the blame would be pretty clearly on Fury, because the messages from AJ. I don't think AJ's done an interview for a few weeks, has he?
Not really. He's not done anything like. He's been on a few smaller radio stations and stuff like that, but he's not really come out in any mass media outlet yet. I think it's. I mean, with Fury, it's like sometimes Fury just likes going against the grain.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You ask him a question about something, you want to disagree. He's always like, he always wants to go against the grain, I think. I just think he likes that, being a bit awkward. The crap about I'm drinking 13 pints of Stella at night. I don't believe a word of it.
No.
An absolute word of it. I'm not saying he's not drinking any 13 pints. You know what I mean? It's just, look at the shape of him. His face looked really thin. Yeah. I know I saw there was that video of him on the beach and he looked chunky. That was probably like, I don't know, a month ago. His face looked very slim.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just playing silly buggers a little bit, and I'll be more worried if we get to the end of March and it's not done. Because also you got to think that they have said May, June, and then they've clearly said June, and now they are saying the back end of June, but it's still in that May, June period. Yeah. But you think if it's in June for a mega fight like this, it needs months of build up, and we're not there yet. Would be by the end of March you want it announced, because then that's 3 months to the fight if it's at the end of June.
Yeah.
I
think the important thing is,
and whether Fury's annoyed because he never got a fight in, before this one, because it is a risk for him. That's 18 months in inactivity.
Yeah,
or close to.
Yeah, it's definitely I think it's the IFL interview where he definitely looks unhappy. Like he's quite short in the interview, giving short answers, and it's almost kind of not similar, not quite to the level, but when he was promoting Fury Klitschko 2, which was like half sold at the MEN, wasn't selling particularly well, and that was actually the beginning of the the downward sort of spiral that he went through. I don't think it's quite on that level, but he's definitely not. Doesn't seem to be particularly happy, not in a good place. And he can be guilty of contradicting himself a little bit. I think in the same interview he said, "I've stopped training. I've given up training, and I'm on 12 pints a day." And then they said, "Well, when was the last time you sparred?" He was like, "I sparred yesterday." I'm like, "Okay, well, I thought you weren't it's just very quick, very easy to kind of like catch him in a in a lie. But I don't know. Let's see. I am of the opinion that it still goes ahead, probably late June, maybe early July. The only thing that I can think, if
By the way,
go on.
I was just going to say, in that, is it Rob Tebbutt that did the interview, the Scottish guy? I think it is, isn't it?
No, it's Rob Tebbutt. I think does Boxing Social. He owns Boxing Social, I think, or he's but I don't think he's done any interviews for a while.
Sorry, yeah. Sorry, it's not Rob Tebbutt. Who's the ball Scottish guy for IFL TV?
I can't remember.
He did the interview anyway.
Yeah.
It's the one who did the interview. But then there's footage of them two playing table tennis as well, and just watch it because it's quite funny because Fury gets beat just at the end.
Yeah.
He just says something that I won't repeat. It's just really funny what he says.
Right, I'll have a look at that.
But yeah, I don't know. I think I'll be more worried if we're still doing this in 2 weeks. I think.
Yeah. Any more rubbish predictions then? Do you reckon it's going to be announced this week?
I do think it's going to be announced this week, but I have said that before. But I'll keep saying it. It's going to be announced this. I think it's imminent.
I love it.
The other thing is what I think more this week. I think more this week than next week is if they do it next week. Oh, I don't know actually. If they do it next week, yeah. See, if they do it next week, will they announce something like that just before White's about to fight Povetkin? Will they announce it on that week?
Maybe.
Kind of. I don't know if that helps that fight or hinders it. So I think Hearn would want to get it sorted out next week. Then Joshua's, and he can link a Coley into AJ, and then AJ may be at Coley fight. I just can't see it being the week after. And then if it's not by this next week or the week after, I think that then it's clearly issues.
Yeah, I'd agree. All right,
you've got a lot of Americans as well. I follow a lot of the American channels. There's quite a few deluded Americans, and I know there's deluded Brits as well. Don't get me wrong; it's everywhere. But they're all like, and there might be some truth in this, but they're all just like, oh, it's all because of they can't get away with it. It's all because of Wilder. He holds all the cards at the moment, and the fight will only go ahead if he says so, and all this stuff. So even if it does go ahead, I think some of them will just say, oh yeah, well he let it go ahead.
It is weird how we haven't really heard from Wilder or Shelley Finkel. It'd be interesting to get their take on it. I'm sure there's probably going to be a gag order on whatever they've agreed and money and whatnot. I don't think they'll be able to talk about it. So I don't think we'll ever really know what was the final outcome with that.
It's weird how, Wilder hasn't got a fight yet. We're into March now.
Yeah.
And it's not even like the rumors of someone or strong rumors. It's just no one. It makes you wonder if Wilder's mentally all right, ready to fight, fallen out or having some dispute himself with his own team. But why on earth has he not got anything lined up? At least with like Ruiz, I don't think it's official. It's not on BoxRec yet, but like he's fighting Areola in April, and that's been spoken about. But are they just going to throw Wilder someone out the blue for May? Maybe.
I think it will be weird. I think it will be almost kind of a top 40 or 50 tune-up fight. It'll have to be now because he's been in the ring for so long. I think he's got to be. You can't put him in there with an experienced like a Kawanaki or Robert Helenius, because there's a very good chance he could get beat again. I think you've got to put him in there with just a tune-up, and maybe even put him on an undercard for Deontay Wilder. That would be the move, and then just kind of slowly put him back into position to maybe challenge for the a vacant WBC title. I think that's what Fury would do if he's not so far down the line in Tyson Fury is having a tune-up against somebody you've probably never heard of. Like he'll pull out another Tom Schwartz or Otto Wallin.
To be fair, Otto Wallin's now looked like quite a good fight.
I know. Yeah, kind of made his name off of Tyson Fury. He's probably in most people's top 20 now.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's enough Fury AJ talk. I think we've probably talked the hind legs off that for the last few weeks. Let's talk about some other stuff. What other news have you got?
Well, just again, more frustration really on the Usyk and Joyce. You know, we spoke about an interview that we saw from Usyk's manager. I think we spoke about that last week. Yeah. And now Warren's kind of rubbishing that kind of split and said they've made an offer and they're waiting to hear. But I don't know. It just feels, I don't know if it's going to be the waiting for the AJ Fury and then everything else will fall into place, but just a bit annoying. There's quite a lot of fights being announced, but the heavyweight division is just not really moving. It feels a bit stuck.
Mm. Yeah, I was thinking about this today actually, and I think it's a little bit like you know, like with the transfer window, you're waiting for like a mega transfer, and then as soon as that transfer is done, then it's almost like it has like a cascading effect, and then all the other fights get agreed. You know, if people are kind of waiting in the wings, because if AJ Fury doesn't happen, then Alexander Usyk is fighting AJ. So I don't think he's going to agree anything with anybody until that's done. So, and I think it will just be like that. I think it will just have a knock-on effect, and I think there'll be a lot of fights will be agreed after AJ Fury's done, which let's hope is going to be next week. But it'd be a shame if that doesn't happen. I think.
But also as well, the other thing as well is the pay-per-view element. You know, it's like, you know, the Chisora Parker. I take it that's not happening now, because they were saying it had to be sorted out very soon, otherwise it's not happening. Not heard a word of it. But also you need to know for pay-per-view, you know, things. You can't have pay-per-views probably in the same month. So if it's Hearn and he wants to put Parker and Chisora.
Yeah.
Say again.
Why do you say that Chisora Parker isn't happening? I thought that was
well, it just may not be happening on the 1st of May.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Because Higgins said for that to happen, they have to get a move on because there's not much time. So therefore, it may still happen. But if they go, right, it'll happen at the end of May, well, that might only be 4 weeks away from the Joshua Fury fight. So I imagine it's moving parts, really. You've got to sort that out, and then these other things happen. But yeah, it's just frustrating. And obviously, even though, you know, Usyk and Joyce wouldn't be on the same network, well, it depends if it goes to a purse bid. But, you know, it seems to be kind of moving, so a bit frustrating. And while we're on heavyweight, so it's not so much news, but I mean, both me and you commented on it to each other in the week, so it's worth bringing up in that really awkward interview that Dubois had with his manager, well, ex-trainer and manager, current manager, and Warren. It just seemed, I don't know, just really odd. You've got kind of Warren in the middle, who's okay, a bit more experienced. Then you've got his manager / trainer, who's just a bit like a used car salesman, Dagenham or somewhere like that. And then you got Dubois, who just doesn't say anything. He's like a little voice out there.
Yeah, it's it was a weird move. To be honest, I didn't manage to sit through the whole interview. I couldn't do it. I think I tapped out after about 3 minutes. It was pretty cringeworthy, and I don't think I was going to get anything from listening to it, to be honest. He's on the comeback track. You know, I think for well, it doesn't really do him any favors because he's not a big talker. You know, he can still be. I think he's just got to get his head down. You know, maybe don't do any interviews. Maybe stay off social media. get your head down, he's obviously with a new trainer now. Yeah, it was a bit of a weird one. But Frank Warren seems to be doing an interview every day at the moment, doesn't he?
Yeah, his eye didn't look fully right either, I thought. I mean, I could see his eye look slightly, I don't know if this can be a permanent thing, but the shape of it seemed a bit different. Don't know if that's a scarring or just something he's going to have, or it's not fully healed. I don't know.
Right.
Obviously, whoever he's next, that won't probably be at any decent level, so probably won't be able to do it. But they're going to be targeting the eye, aren't they?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, just going back to Chisora Parker, do you see that as a pay-per-view fight? I don't know if we've talked about this before, but how Chisora's lost 10 fights. Parker, is pretty, well known. It wasn't a fantastic spectacle, his last fight, and then they're now fighting each other, and all of a sudden it's on pay-per-view, and I just don't understand why people just keep on accepting that it's like, yeah, okay, yeah, that's pay-per-view.
I mean, it's always a hard question. Is that pay-per-view? I don't know. It will be depending on what the numbers are. It's weak on its own, but it's heavyweight. Chisora is a big name. They're always like clever, I mean, this is the way they look at it. And Chisora will always be like this, or has been like it for a while, where, of course, he's going to take the Usyk fight. It's pay-per-view. It's good money. And if he loses in a good way, which is what he did, he lost on points, giving it a go, he's still pay-per-view material, because he's just beat someone who, in theory, could go on and win loads of stuff. So it's kind of clever sometimes that, he's kept that position. I think and Parker's well known. He's coming back off a win. So I think it's weak on its own. I think if you have some good undercard, and the fact that there's been not much boxing or pay-per-view anyway, then yeah, I think they'll get away with it if it's 1st of May.
I know, but I know they'll probably get away with it. I mean, it's pretty obvious it's going to be on pay-per-view. But would you say that is a pay-per-view fight? I just don't think that's a pay-per-view fight.
For me, if they get away with it, then it is.
Yeah.
I never asked the question, like, you asked me it's because it's like, I'm going to pay 20 quid for it because I'm a boxing fan. For me, most fights, I'd probably pay 20 quid to watch a Coley this weekend. I would. So in that way, it's pay-per-view worthy because I'd pay it. But really, the question is, does it make enough money? Does it make more money on pay-per-view than it would on a normal Saturday night? Do you know what I mean? And that's the equation. Really. I don't know what the budget is for a Saturday night for the Akoli fight, but can it create more money? So you probably only need 100,000 buys or.
Okay. Yeah.
So the way I'd always look at it really is it going to make more money than a Saturday night normal fight? So a Colin Gualaki will be given that. Sky will give a certain amount of money for that. I don't know how much it is. And I suppose if pay-per-view can raise more money than that, it's pay-per-view worthy. But it all depends on what number they're trying to pay the fighters. So you might have a pay-per-view that's done the job on 100,000.
Yeah,
that's probably raise more money than a Saturday night fight. You'd get the money from Sky. Others, for what they want, might need 300,000. So you got to look at that fight, and you'd say they'll probably break it down 50-50, and both of them will want a decent amount. I imagine that has to clear something like 200,000 buys to probably get what they want. The difficulty is they're probably going to have to bring some bigger names on the card to get 200,000, probably. And then therefore that's going to then start eating into their percentages. So there's a lot to kind of work out. So the question is, if it pay-per-view worthy, depends what you mean.
Yeah, okay.
It's certainly not, but there are different levels, aren't there? There's different scales of pay-per-view success.
Well, yeah, there is. I mean, there's pay-per-views in the US which are kind of laughable, really. I guess I've just always associated pay-per-view with like the only really for the mega fights, you know, the Tyson Holyfield, Lennox Lewis against Holyfield, you know, those are always pay-per-view, and you kind of understood that. You kind of get that. It's the pinnacle of the sport. But when I just see, I don't know, I just have a bit of an issue with it. And yeah, maybe it's just me, you know.
White Povetkin. White Povetkin was pay-per-view. That did 280, I think.
Did it?
You know, other pay-per-views before, isn't he? White, you know, he's part of the Parker fight. He's consistently, I think, hit around the 250 to 300 mark. And obviously that's a number that works.
Yeah.
Financially. And so you'd think, you know, does Parker Chisora do that? Maybe not quite 280, but it might not be a million miles away, and it depends how much help it needs.
Yeah.
And that's what they'll be looking at.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a fair point.
Trainers.
Yes.
There's been some trainer movement this week. I'll let you talk that because I know you like this stuff.
I know. I got a lot of notifications on Twitter. But yeah, when did I messaged you this week, didn't I? I said about the trainer link up. Andy Lee is going to be training Joseph Parker and Virgil Hunter with Joshua Buatsi, which is an interesting link up. I think the link with Andy Lee, I know Andy Lee is in the Tyson Fury camp, and I know that Tyson Fury and Joseph Parker are quite pally. I think they've become quite pally since the Huey Fury Joseph Parker fight. So I think he kind of uses maybe his knowledge, his counsel on, you know, who he thinks he should be training. So I don't know if Joseph Parker is going to be based in the UK now. Then he must be if he's going to be, you know, training with Andy Lee, because I don't imagine Andy Lee's going to, you know, go move to New Zealand. I mean, I don't quite know how it's going to work, but yeah, I think quite an interesting. An interesting link up for both. Andy Lee was obviously quite well known for being quite an aggressive fighter, and I think that's obviously what a lot of people have commented. That's what Joseph Parker is really lacking. He's a bit too much of a nice guy. Can be quite conservative. He was quite cagey in the AJ fight, albeit with a very odd refereeing. Yeah. But I mean, you're talking about 2 or 3 fights before you actually start to see the fruits of you know, the trainers' work. But yeah, what's your take on all that? The trainer link up.
What you've just said there is right normally, but then look at Fury. That didn't take 2 or 3 fights.
Yeah, I mean, there's a difference between, I guess, applying stuff that you've been training or learning, and then also like a different game plan. I mean, the Fury linked up with Sugar Hill, and they adopted a very different game plan to the first fight, which was, you know, boxing on the back foot, you know, staying away from that right hand, which actually did very well. I think Deontay Wilder barely laid a glove on Fury in that first fight, apart from the ones that knocked him down. And that's one of the more impressive things about Tyson Fury. Like he beat Deontay Wilder, 2 different ways, really. I mean, I know the first fight was a draw. Most could argue that he won that fight. And then the second fight put him on the ropes on his back, and stopped him. So, but yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I think it's an interesting link up, and I think maybe something that he needed. I do think that Joseph Parker was in danger of coasting a little bit, and his career has kind of stagnated, some would argue, since he lost his title, and then obviously losing to Dillian White. He really needs, you know, a couple of big wins to get him back into that kind of world title mix.
And Buatsi, you think it's a good move to go into Virgil?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't really know that much about a Virgil Hunter as a trainer, apart from his long sort of affiliation with Andre Ward. And Andre Ward was, was a special talent. Yeah, he trained Khan.
Yeah, Khan for a while, didn't he?
Yeah, it wasn't that many fights. I think it was maybe 4 or 5 fights in the end. And I know that he does train Tony Yoka as well, the heavyweight. But yeah, I think he's a good trainer. I think it'll be, it's a safe pair of hands, really, isn't it? I think. I'm just surprised that he hasn't gone.
Who was he with?
I can't.
Who was?
I can't remember.
Yeah. Okay. Final bit of news that I had was just kind of shout out to Hagler. Obviously, passed away yesterday. Well, I saw the news last night. And he was obviously in his heyday when we were either not born or very, very young, early 80s. So not really our lifetime of boxing, but obviously we have seen the footage and know all the stories, and the first round war he had. That's one of the most famous rounds, isn't it?
Yeah.
Hagler Hearn, and I think it's probably what he's best known for is that fight. Obviously, he had other fights, the Duran, and he had quite a few rivalries as he went through the years as at middleweight. But again, yeah, not quite our era, so we can't. I don't have loads and loads of detail. Often you just hear through other people telling you stuff and looking back at some of the old footage. But yeah, quite young, 66, and shame.
Yeah, no, it's a real shame. And Marvin Hagler, he was actually one of my dad's favorite boxers. And it was actually my dad that got me into boxing. Like the first fight that I ever watched was Chris Eubank versus Michael Watson 2, which I think was 1991. That was the first fight I ever watched from start to finish. And that's really what kind of set me off in watching boxing. And he always, whenever we watched a fight together, it was almost kind of annoying. He always said, if you like boxing, watch Marvin Hagler versus Thomas Hearns. And I think it was a third round stoppage. And that first round, yeah, absolutely brutal. Granite chin. It was kind of a strange career because he stayed middleweight his whole career. Didn't go up in weight. I think he lost a couple of fights, and then that last fight he had with Sugar Ray Leonard. And Sugar Ray Leonard, I think, was kind of the golden boy of boxing, and got kind of, some say, an unfair decision. And then Marvin Hagler kind of jacked it in, said, "That's it, no more boxing for me," and then went to Italy to start a career in acting. But I mean, what an amazing career.
Yeah. He the scorecards of that Leonard fight, it's strange. They were like very, very close, and then one of the I think it was like 15-13 two judges. I think it was a split decision, and then one of them had it like really, really wide, and that was the controversy. It was like why is that one card that wide? And to be fair, we're still getting that happening now. I mean, we'll talk about it later, but I thought that happened last night as well for me.
Yeah. Nothing new.
So yeah, interesting.
All right. Yeah. Cool. All right. Let's wrap it up. We're going to do a quick video on next week's action prediction for Akoli and Glowacki, and we'll review Chocolatito versus Juan Estrada. Thanks for everybody for listening.